Welcome back to the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. I'm Greg Pickel, and today, recruiting expert from Blue White Illustrated, Ryan Snyder, joins the show. We have a lot to talk about. A hot start for Penn State on the recruiting trails that landed London Montgomery, a four-star running back out of Scranton Prep on Monday. There's probably more commitments to come for Penn State this week. We're going to get into that, where things stand for Penn State on the class of 2023 quarterback front, and also review a camp Ryan was at over the weekend. So stick with us. It's the BWI Daily Recruiting Show, and it starts now. Ryan Snyder joins us on the BWI Daily Recruiting Show, the recruiting expert at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, where it's just $1 for 1 year of access to sign up for the latest Penn State news, notes, insider reviews, and much more. Ryan, Penn State gets off on Monday with a new class of 2023 commitment in London Montgomery, a four-star running back out of Scranton Prep, who took other official visits. This was not maybe the most cut and dry recruitment for Penn State, at least in terms of some of these guys going from Pennsylvania star to Penn State commit. He did check out some other schools. He gave some other options a chance to get in front of him, Virginia Tech and Boston College being his other two official visits. But by and large, even though it took him a little bit to make a decision here in the month of July, this one is long pointed toward Penn State. You had an on-3 recruiting prediction machine pick in for him to become a Nittany Lion, and as of about 5:15 Monday night, that is now the case.
Yep. Penn State gets its running back, and I think this has been pointing towards him for, I don't know, I'd say mid-April is when to me it became pretty clear that there's a good chance he's going to end up here. But, of course, Trayon Webb ends up at Florida, so this should be Penn State's only running back in the class this year, and it makes a lot of sense, man. He grew up a Penn State fan. Told us it's a dream come true, was the quote he gave us about ending up at Penn State. And he just fits this class really well from a character perspective, a personality perspective, leadership perspective. He was talking to me about, some of his big goals this upcoming year is more so, from a leadership than yards. Of course, he said he would love to hit 4,000 yards and 50 touchdowns and all that kind of things that, you set a high bar at the high school level, but more importantly to him, it's kind of the off the field things that he really wants to improve on this year, and that'd be great. I think that would, he fits Penn State in a lot of different ways. So 5'10", 180. He is a four-star prospect in both the on-3 rankings and the on-3 consensus rankings. Number 364 nationally for the consensus, and number 273 in the on-3 rankings. So big get here for Penn State. They're happy. And, hey, man, commitment number 12 when it comes to four-star prospects, I believe. So they are, as I've been hitting on the last couple of weeks, they're on their way to 15 or so four stars. And that's the path to a top 10 class now without too many five-star players available.
Yeah, and that's obviously a path to having a blue chip ratio as well that gives you more 4 and 5 stars than 3 stars. So Penn State trending in the right direction there. Obviously, as you mentioned, Trayon Webb was the other running back target Penn State had its eye on in this class. He committed to Florida late last week. So that really, if there was any question about where London Montgomery was going to end up, I think it completely was erased by the time Trayon Webb picked Florida. So Penn State gets its guy there. And I know we had talked before, Ryan, about the idea that they could take 2 running backs in this class and they wouldn't pass up on Montgomery if Webb had committed and he still wanted to come here. But in your mind, 1 running back makes sense in this class. It seems like it's a good use of a scholarship, obviously, but I don't know if a second one is required. Penn State was surprisingly not impacted by any transfer portal losses at that position outside of Noah Cain following the 2021 season. Maybe you have more shuffling next year. We'll see. But I don't think you're going to see a class. I guess what I'm getting at here is that I don't think you're going to see a class every year like the last one where you get a Nick Singleton and a Katron Allen. I think you're going to see more of this moving forward where you get one of those guys and then every couple of years you might find 2.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a little too early to say for 2024, of course. I mean, Quinton Martin's kind of the wild card, I guess. I mean, when I do look at 2024, there are certainly quite a few options that would work there. But Quinton Martin is the athlete who's going to be a running back, I assume. We'll actually talk about Quinton here a little later in the show, so I don't want to go too much into him. Of course, there's Sam Williams-Dixon, too, who I really like. He came to Penn State's camp, had an excellent camp, so staff has good numbers on him. You've seen Wills, some other guys there. But that does make a lot of sense as far as how to attack it. But the transfer portal will dictate everything, as it's going to dictate so many positions moving forward, especially those ones where it's not deep, like wide receiver, offensive line, etc. But I could see a few guys potentially maybe backing out, transferring down the road potentially, and in that running back room. But who knows? We'll figure it out. And I think that's why Penn State was considering 2 running backs this year, just because there's a lot of flexibility there, and a lot of guys that have a lot of eligibility. And then, of course, if Nick Singleton becomes what we expect Nick Singleton to become, that could impact that room in the years ahead.
The transfer portal, take it, then giveth away. Obviously, Penn State's been fortunate to land some very talented players from the transfer portal, but has not always been able to keep guys from leaving. So time will tell, but we will see London Montgomery, the newest Penn State commit. And Ryan, it was the start of commitment season, so to speak, for Penn State this week, or commitment week, if you will. But there's 2 more big announcements on the horizon. I think obviously Penn State fans have heard us talk plenty about who those guys are, but let's start with Tony Rojas. He is going to announce around dinner time on Thursday, which is July 14th, as we sit here on July 12th. On Tuesday, he is a on-3 recruiting prediction machine heavy favorite to end up at Penn State. So where do things stand here? Remember, this was a player that was supposed to announce on July 5. He pushed that back for what he called personal reasons, but has said on social media that he's 100% committed to the school he's going to go to. So where do things stand here? Where does Penn State sit as we get ready for the announcement number 2 of the week?
Yeah, I mean, Tony Rojas admitted himself that he's committed already. He put it out there on Twitter that he's already committed to a school. So I think that kind of says a lot there. We've always expected it to be Penn State, and I don't, for example, like Georgia seems to be getting some players that they're figured out. Clemson is already full at their linebacker position. So when you just kind of look across the nation and the schools that he was considering, it all signs point to Penn State there. And I would expect him to be a Nittany Lion. And of course, it's a massive pickup for them because he and Tamir have been 1-1A for the longest time. And to get those 2 locked up, it's that's been I would say one of the top 3 goals of this year for this class was to get those 2 on board. Of course, the offensive line was another big goal as well, which they've done a good job with. But although they do need to replace Josh Miller, we'll see how that goes in the weeks and months ahead. But yeah, getting these 2 on board is big. Of course, we'll just go into Tamir. That's another guy that I think is just a matter of time. He admitted that he's announcing at 6:15 on Friday evening. Tamir, come on, brother, 6:15 on a Friday. You're killing me with that, but. And he's a great guy, a great kid, man. Tamir's been awesome to me, and he'll be a great class. He'll be a great teammate in this class, and another guy that just fits everything off the field that you're looking for here. So he's down to Penn State, Virginia Tech, and Miami. But again, and all signs are really pointing to Penn State here. Miami probably gave Penn State the biggest push, although I don't want to overlook that Brent Pry relationship. So Tamir flat out admitted that if Brent Pry was still here, he would have been part of this class a long time ago. And I think once he was able to kick it with Manny Diaz and build a little bit of a more relationship there during that official visit, that kind of helped put everything over the line for them.
This has been an interesting recruiting run for Penn State at linebacker because obviously Brent Pry leaves at, late December, early January, around the turn of the new year to take the Virginia Tech job. And Penn State certainly seemed to go in a different direction when it hired Manny Diaz as its new defensive coordinator and linebackers coach. I mean, obviously the one we've talked about most is Phil Picciotti, and the fact that Penn State was seemingly one of his top schools until Manny Diaz got here and the focus shifted a bit, and he was really, I don't want to say no longer being pursued by Penn State, but obviously when they didn't make his one list of top schools, you kind of got the sense that things maybe changed pretty drastically once Brent Pry left. So with Tony Rojas and Tamir Robinson, Penn State obviously kept the pressure on those guys prior to Brent Pry leaving and once Manny Diaz arrived. But Ryan, are you impressed by the job Manny Diaz has been able to do to get these guys seemingly almost to the finish line? We'll see if they get across the finish line on Thursday and Friday, respectively. But just your initial gut, whether you've heard it from players or just from what you've seen so far, just how this recruiting process has played out. Impressed by Diaz, the recruiter, so far?
Honestly, the coordinators don't do a whole lot of recruiting. Now, I should say that. They do a lot of recruiting, but they don't do as much as some of the other position coaches, so they don't get brought up as much. I mean, Yurchik, for example, it's not, if guys come on campus.
It's rare. It's rare to hear about him, right?
Yeah, it's same with Manny, though. We hear about Manny with the linebackers, but not a whole lot with the defensive linemen or safeties where, for example, Nittany Lions, for example, right? Like he brings up Terry Smith all the time, even though he's not a position coach, but Terry is a big presence in Philadelphia. So, look, if they get these two, yeah, right. I mean, that was kind of, these are the guys that got to get over the line. And then, of course, when you look into 2024, there's guys like Anthony Specca who they got to get over the line as well. But I don't have a lot of information to know exactly how Manny's doing on the recruiting trail, other than the proof of just getting Tamir and Tony, who have been, like I said, 1 and 1A for the longest time. So if they get them, then yeah, I don't know how you can argue that he's not doing a great job, because these are the two most important guys for sure. One thing I would say is that I think when that transition happened from Brent to Manny, I think Manny has interest in Tamir maybe as a Mike. Now, that's not a definite. Of course, they're going to get here. They're going to move around. They're going to figure things out. And in some degrees, it's just kind of get your best guys out there. But I do think Tamir and his size, that interests Manny a lot in the Mike position, and kind of maybe had an impact on the whole Pachotti recruitment. But I do think Tamir Robinson could be a Mike for Penn State. That's something to keep an eye on down the road.
So Penn State is getting close to a point here, Ryan, where they're not going to be full at the end if they get these two guys here to close the week. But, we talk a lot about how the summertime is really commitment season, and Penn State, if they land both of these, will be at a place where there's only room for a handful of guys left to commit in this cycle. So it's kind of amazing how we sit, 6 or so months from National Signing Day, 2022 for the class of 2023. And space is filling up quickly. Is this kind of how you expected the cycle to go? Is this kind of how you saw things playing out?
It happens every year like that almost. Last year's class was pretty similar. I don't remember the exact number of where it was at the end of July, but it was in a pretty good position where there was only, a handful of scholarships left. So yeah, of course, Evan Link, man, got to get Evan Link. He's massively important. And there's a few other positions there. I think they would take 2 more offensive linemen. I think they just really want to figure out what's up with Link. Ramble too. Stanton Ramble's pretty important as well. But I think they just really want to figure out that situation, and then they'll start considering some other players out there. But I think another wide receiver makes a lot of sense. There's some Micah Mays, of course, got an offer not that long ago. Right. Out of Florida, I believe. He's somebody to keep an eye on. Another guy too, Edwin Joseph from Chaminade. I've been hearing more and more about him in recent weeks. Keep an eye on him. He's a 6'3", 171 pound prospect. I'm not sure. Off the top of my head, I don't believe Penn State's offered him yet, but they're showing serious interest. I could see him popping up on campus maybe for a visit at the end of July. So keep an eye on Edwin Joseph out of Chaminade Madonna. I know J1 Sider's down there recruiting all those guys. He has good ties to Chaminade. So a lot of positions still, defensive line potentially. We'll see how things shake out. And of course, I think they're done at defensive back, but Jakeem Jackson's still out there. Kavion Keys, I don't want to overlook as well. They would add Kavion. So still on pace for 23, 24, 25 potentially if there is a top target out there that they need to get down the road. But this, from a scholarship perspective, 23 has kind of been the number I've had circled for a long time, and what they'd be at 19, I think, after Tony and Tamir. So only a couple spots left, but of course with 6 months left, a lot's going to shake out still. We'll see if Penn State can keep them all on board.
Yeah, Jalen Thompson, another guy that recently put Penn State in his top 5, could be a part of this class at some point. Penn State pushing for a visit later this month, as you reported at BlueWireIllustrated.com. And then, it's okay. I'll pick you up, buddy. Don't worry about it. But then let's just touch real quick. Let's just touch real quick on Evan Link. And I know we don't have much to add here, but that kind of is the update, Ryan, is that everyone seems to be waiting around for him to set a decision date. Obviously, he didn't make it to Michigan for an official visit. He did make it to Stanford. He made it to Penn State, of course. And what is your gut telling you at this point? Is this going to be a decision date and a top this and a long runway? Or is it just going to be one day, here's my choice, this is where I'm going, take it or leave it?
I'm literally going to write an Evan Link story probably like today, just so it's in there. I definitely expect Penn State, but the thing that's got me confused is just like seems to be very little communication. I've hit on this a couple weeks now, and that's not. I don't think that's necessarily a negative thing for Penn State. I think Evan's just trying to escape it all. Like, I know he's not talking to any reporters. I'm pretty confident saying he's not regularly talking to coaches every single day. So I can see it coming at any time, and I think it's just you're going to see a random tweet one day, and that'll kind of be it. Similar to Elliott Washington, for example, who kind of caught us off guard, by the way. Which, by the way, we didn't hit on Elliott Washington to start the show.
Kind of caught us off guard. Yeah, it definitely.
Caught
I mean,
us off guard.
I think we knew it was a possibility. I don't think we had the date dialed down at all. But hey, that's a good flip for Penn State. A player who really took off this year, Ryan, on the track. Literally, he's a burner on the track, and he ran really well at Under Armour Miami. I think we both agree that the fact that he didn't take an official visit to Alabama probably indicates that maybe even though he was still listed as a Crimson Tide commit, he probably really didn't have the option to go there and or was no longer a commit. But Penn State beats out them, I guess you can say, and also Michigan State, among others, to land him. Good get on Friday that came out of the blue.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that he wasn't. I still think he probably could have ended up at Alabama. I just don't know how hard they were fighting for it. And it's wild to me how high of a level Alabama's recruiting on, because this is an excellent player, but I think they just have guys with maybe a little more size or whatever it may have been that had their attention. Obviously, I don't cover Alabama, so I don't want to speak on it too much, but Penn State is very happy to get Elliott Washington on board, who is a great player. His only negative I see is he's 5'10", 5'11", more so than that 6'1" kind of frame that everybody wants nowadays. But lots to like there about Washington. And a lot of people at Michigan State thought they were getting Elliott Washington. That's the only, because Penn State people were confident too, but that's the only thing that kept me from ever putting in a pick or anything like that, because I just had a lot of friends at Michigan State saying, hey, he has family ties here. He's kind of hinted to Michigan State that he might end up here. And a lot of positives on both sides, right? So when you're hearing that, how do you make a pick or anything? But that was another massive one for them, man. He was their 4th top 100 recruit in this class, and that's what they got to do, man. They got to get top 100 guys if you're not going to get 5 stars. So to have 4 is good. I don't believe there's too many others who are top 100 that Penn State's seriously in the mix now. I have to look up and down the board, but they're certainly in the mix to get a few more 4 stars. And Evan Link would be the 15th if they get Tony, they get Tamir, and they can get Evan Link. That would be 15. And then of course you got Kavion Keys and a couple other guys. So math of 15, 16 is how you get a top 10 class. I'm going to just keep repeating it. That's what they have to do. And right now they have a real chance of doing so.
Yeah, I'm scrolling the list of On3 consensus top 100 players right now. Nobody through the top 50 that Penn State still has a shot at that we're aware of or that we think they have a shot at. Obviously, you have Evan Link, who's not too far outside of that group of players. But now, as you scroll through the list here, Penn State probably, John Walker's still on the board down in Florida. I don't think that's super realistic, though. Correct me if I'm wrong. But other than that, Penn State in a place right now where it would need some players to move up the recruiting rankings to get another top 100 player. But hey, you never know. Time will tell. This is the Blue White Illustrated BWI Daily Recruiting Show, rather. That's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel. Ryan, we touched on Tamir Robinson, and you got to see him in person at a camp out in Pittsburgh this weekend. You saw Anthony Specca, another player you've mentioned here. So let's dive into that. What were some of your top takeaways from that event and from the opportunity to see some of Western Pennsylvania's best talent in person?
Yeah, we're at the 2 Tenths camp put on by Dwayne Brown. All the guys there at Team Volve and Team 2 Tenths. They've been putting us on for, I think this is our 3rd or 4th year now. It's become a pretty good camp and something that I think will be a regular on my calendar moving forward. Now, the top guys, of course, I think Penn State fans are pretty familiar with the top guys out there. Of course, Lamont Payne, cornerback commit for Penn State, was there, and same as always for Lamont, man. He's always right on guys, and I thought he performed pretty well. I got to watch him in some different drills and stuff like that. Lamont's. I think he's the best corner in the region. I don't know too many others that are ahead of him, and I know Penn State is incredibly happy to get him on board because of that cornerback class was just. There's nothing really in the region right now. So that was a big get for Penn State. And Lamont's awesome, man. I really enjoy chatting with him. He's a fun character, and he's going to be a really fun guy in the locker room moving forward. Tamir didn't participate in this camp. He's, of course, just coming off of an injury. So he was there to hang out, and he trains with these guys. So just out there for support more than anything. So it was good to catch up with Tamir. He's a great guy. I've hit on him a little bit ago. The guys I would really got to watch closely and I enjoyed kind of getting to see up close for the first time really for both was Quinton Martin and Anthony Specca. Quinton Martin, of course, 6'1.5", 185 is what we got him at. And I think that's pretty accurate. We have him as an athlete, and he's I truly, I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think he's the best athlete to come out of Pennsylvania since Micah Parsons, and nothing that I've seen disputes
high
that.
praise, really
right.
high praise. Yeah.
One thing, so I'll have a story on Quinton here. Actually, by the time you guys are watching this, you'll be able to read it. But he's told me he might play corner back this year, which is interesting to me. I always had him more as a running back, linebacker, but he has real interest in playing defensive back. So that's something to keep an eye on. Now, deep down, I think running back is his position. I really believe that's where most schools are going to recruit him at. And Penn State's recruiting him as a running back right now. But I'll be curious to see some defensive back film from him this year because he has real interest in that, and how he performs there could impact some things. So that's why he's going to be an athlete listed that way for a long time. He did say that Penn State's certainly one of his top schools, and you guys can read the article for more information there. Anthony Specca, awesome kid, man. This is my first time really having a long chat with Anthony. Man, he fits Penn State perfectly, but he also fits Notre Dame perfectly. He also fits Michigan perfectly as far as caring about all the right things, great image, hell of a player as well, of course. So really curious to see how Anthony Specca's July goes. He has visits to Penn State, Notre Dame, and Michigan all lined up. And in my eyes, that those should end up being the schools that are seriously in the mix with him. He did take visits to Tennessee and South Carolina, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few others poke around. Ohio State, keep an eye on them. They do have an offer out there. But the fact that he's going to Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame at the end of July, that grabs my attention because he's been to those schools a couple times. He has the option at the end of July to potentially go elsewhere. So the fact that, like I said, that he's going to those three schools, that tells me that they should end up being, if not his top three, among his top five, put it that way. So one thing also to add with Specca is that he's going to come to Penn State for a personal visit, which I think is important because all of his visits previously have been for games. I believe he was at the Lash Bash last year. So he's always been in a group. You really need to get those personal visits in where it's just you and the staff and you get a whole day to him because you learn a lot and just about the amount of this detail that they can go into when they can focus on one player says a lot. He'll learn a lot. So big visit for him coming up on July 28th. And I believe he's their number one linebacker target. If he's not, he's certainly number one, number two, number three, somewhere in that ballpark for 2024. They have to get the Central Catholic linebacker.
So obviously we've talked before about the importance of those one-on-one visits. They're rare. They don't happen often, but with Jason Moore, we heard, of course, he committed to Ohio State, but Penn State really had its foot in the door late in that one because of the fact they were able to host him sort of by himself, and that was for an official. Specca, of course, taking an unofficial, so they can't do quite the same thing, but it's hard to put into words how much more you can do when you have a guy on campus pretty much by himself or in a very small group, as opposed to when you have 10 or 15 or 20 guys and you're trying to give each of them the personalized experience they want, and there's just not enough time and hours in a day. So we'll see there, but very important prospect for Penn State, as you note, Ryan. And as we head down the home stretch here of the BWI Daily Recruiting Show on Tuesday, July 12th, let's just talk quarterback real quick. So it was an interesting week since we last recorded. Obviously, you chatted with T. Frank late last week about some of the happenings going on, but Penn State loses Marcus Stokes, the class of 2023 quarterback from Florida, flipped to Florida, kind of out of the blue last week. So Penn State down a quarterback, and we've talked on the message board, the Lions Den message board, our premium place where you can chat with us and learn the latest Penn State news about some options. But all told, Ryan, I think the main takeaway here is be patient, fans, because if you listen to T. Frank on the BWI Daily Show on Monday, he talked about whether or not Penn State needs a quarterback here, and I think we can continue to debate that. But ultimately, I don't think this one's going to happen overnight. There's too many guys who Penn State was in on who they stopped recruiting after Stokes committed. And there's most of those guys, if you look at the board of offers, are committed elsewhere. So to replace your flip, you're going to have to flip somebody. And that can often be easier said than done, especially when I look at this group for the most part, Ryan, Penn State really has no geographic ties or anything else to give it an opportunity to get his foot back in the door. But I don't think it's ever smart to discount James Franklin and Mike Yursich, the recruiters, either.
Yeah, they're definitely going to have to flip somebody. There's names floating around that I think the staff has interest in, but I mean Jackson Smolik's been talked about a good little bit. He's currently committed to Lane out of West Des Moines, Iowa. We'll keep an eye on him. He just committed to Tulane at the end of June. So if Penn State were to show interest there, we'll see if they can get him on campus. He did go to the Lead 11. He actually was a late add to the Lead 11 and certainly took advantage of it. That grabbed the attention of some schools. So we'll keep an eye on Jackson. Brady Rojas is another player. He's committed to I haven't heard enough and this is how it is for all these guys. Like there's nobody right now that people are pointing at and saying, hey, we've got a foot in the door here, aiming to get him on campus, something like that. I mean, it seems like this is a total restart for Penn State, which
it is. Yeah.
It's definitely going to be, I don't want to say a black eye on the class, but it's certainly going to be an issue, I guess you'd say. Now, of course, what'll be interesting here is we have visits opening up in a little under 2 weeks here. I feel like it's very important for them to try and get somebody, at least a couple of these guys on campus if they can. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. But if they can get somebody on campus, it goes a long way then, because just what you can do for those personal kind of, say they come up on a Monday or a Tuesday, you can get a lot out of that. Rather than have them come for games during the season. Game visits they're important, but you just don't get that one-on-one time. Of course, the game just takes priority. So the end of the month here, somebody needs to pop up on campus. I'm sure they're working very hard to try and get somebody to visit. One other name I want to mention publicly is Pierce Clarkson. He's currently committed to Louisville out of St. John Bosco in California, 4-star in the 0-3 consensus. Heard Penn State's trying to talk to him a little bit, so potentially keep an eye on the Louisville commit. He had offers from Oregon and Arkansas, Florida State, a few others. That's a player. Again, he's from all the way out in California, so I don't want to push it too hard, but I've heard some things there about Pierce Clark, so keep an eye on him. Jackson Smolik, Brady Drogosh. There's a few others as well. We'll keep them behind the paywall for now, but Pierce Clarkson has me intrigued. We'll leave it at that.
Well, we'll keep an eye on him. Obviously, a California player going to Louisville signals that he's willing to go away from the West Coast and and everything out there. So we'll see if Penn State can get its foot in the door, but it's going to be a lot more challenging now than it would have been to do so maybe at this time 6 months ago or 8 months ago, what have you. But that is the blessing and curse of recruiting. And if you're going to lose a flip, you better be able to flip back. Penn State's been able to in the past. We'll see what they can do in the future. Ryan, as we come down the home stretch here, any final thoughts as we get ready for 2 more decisions, perhaps news from Evan Link or some of these other players at almost any moment in time? Any final thoughts as we wind down another edition of the BWI Daily Recruiting Show?
I think we pretty much hit on it all today. Evan Link, that's the mystery. We'll see what happens there. And Tony and Tamir should be number 18 and number 19 for Penn State, and just kind of seeing how they finish out July then. Of course, Lash Bash starting to come together. There's some names popping up that are going to be there. We'll get that list out maybe in a week or so, but that list is starting to work, come together. I will say Penn State staff is starting to get back on campus. They've been away for the last week, 2 weeks or so. Now, of course, the dead period does go another 2 weeks, so kind of some staff goes away, then they come back, and the guys who were here, then they go away. So we've still got another, I don't know, 13, a little less than that, another little under 2 weeks of a little more quiet than normal, I guess, on the recruit show. A lot of commitments, but trying to get other recruits and new offers, things like that. That's a bit slower this time of the year. So we'll just get us to that visit period, man, and I think we'll learn a lot more about quarterbacks and some other positions then.
Well, you can learn a lot more about Penn State football and Penn State recruiting by visiting BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, where it's $1 for 1 year of access. Don't wait. That deal is not going to last forever. He's Ryan Snyder. I'm Greg Pickel. We'll be back next week. T. Frank's back tomorrow on the BWI Daily Show, and this has been the BWI Daily Recruiting Show. We'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening.